Hello everyone, and welcome to this video where I'm going to do a feedback session for one of my patrons on Patreon. This is the 5 strongest pieces, I believe, from Paris Ioannou. I hope I say that right. I'm not sure if that's correct, but anyway, I tried. I'm going to show you his art station so you can see. This is his portfolio. If you want to check that out, be sure to do that. He's got some cool stuff, and we're going to be kind of like trying to dissect it a little bit, give some feedback and stuff. This is one of the tiers on my Patreon. If you're interested, I have essentially what is a mentorship for 25 bucks a month or something like that. There's lower tiers than that as well, so you can basically pick and choose what you want. This isn't going to be a paint over session, but there is also one for that. If you're interested, check that out. So anyway, let's get started. I got some stuff to do here. These are the pieces. I'm going to focus on light and color. I'm going to focus on composition. I'm going to focus on the design and the drawing, essentially the underlying structure of the piece. I'm going to focus on the portfolio structure as a whole and what the goal is, what kind of work and why and how everything fits and the order of it in terms of quality. And I'm going to go over the focal points of each piece and each thing individually and kind of like try and go in with some really specific feedback for each one. So, a little preface. I mean, I feel like this is always necessary when you do critiques because I don't want to feel bad. I am going to be honest. I mean, that's kind of the point. So if I don't like something, I'm just going to say it. If I do like something, I'm going to say it and try and explain why on both. Don't take anything personally, obviously. I will simply try to help you by, kind of like, the idea of this whole thing is that I'm pointing out flaws, right? That's how you improve and all this kind of stuff. And obviously also another disclaimer is that everything is my opinion. You don't have to agree. Art is quite subjective, so there you go. But anyway, let's get started with that. Overall, I like your work, but I think it's a little hair off of professional quality. So you're very close, and I think easily within the next year you can hit a professional quality that you can start working on some real stuff, I believe. But it's not quite there yet. I think you're very close though. So I think it might be interesting for you. Let's just go through the list actually. So your lighting and your color is very good. I think your color is your strongest suit. I believe seeing this stuff, I think your colors are really strong and you don't really need to worry about color too much at all. Obviously there's always room to improve, but I believe there's much more important things for you to work on. So in terms of color, I'm quite happy. I don't know, I might pick on some things, but I don't really have any glaring obvious things to say about your color usage. That's quite solid. Your lighting does need some work, although it is also one of your stronger suits, but there's definitely some issues here and there. I had a look before this video, obviously. I'll go into that as well in each piece individually, obviously. The composition is quite solid as well. I mean, it's pretty basic, but it looks like commercial work, which is good. Especially these two pieces are they're essentially the same, largely the same composition. So, but they work. They're kind of commercial things, and I know that you kind of thought about it and looked at some stuff. And I think especially on this one, the composition is very solid and quite good. These ones much less, but these are the 2 recent pieces, I believe. So I think you're doing quite good on that as well. Again, I will go into more detail down the line on individual things. Design and drawing, like your underlying structure, your lying principles, your fundamentals, your anatomy and stuff, that's where really the work needs to be done, I believe. Although the line art here looks really solid and it's a really great point to start drawing from, I think there was something lost in the translation in some areas, and there's clearly some work to do on especially faces and some perspective issues and poses and this and that. So I think you need to go back to your drawing stuff, which is what I'm struggling with myself lately. So your painting and your light and your color is quite solid, but it's more about drawing and design for you. I think that's where you really are going to improve if you focus on that. Then the folio structure, let's try this real quick. I'm going to try and order them in terms of my personal preference. This one is clearly number 1. That's immediately clear to me. Very, very, very obviously the best piece. I think this one is number 2, which is, these are your 2 recent ones, so that's good. This one is the worst one, I think. So I think it's far below the rest in terms of quality. I'm going to go over exactly what I mean, but if it was up to me, I would just get rid of it off of your portfolio entirely. It doesn't do you any favors. As they say, your worst piece is what they will gauge you by in terms of skill. So if they see this, that immediately kind of hurts you. It would be a better portfolio to just have these 2 pieces, if you know what I mean. So in my opinion, get rid of it. Just get rid of it. I think this one is probably, this one is number 3, and then this one is 4. I think this one can be saved though. I wouldn't say delete it. I think all of them can be saved and made very much, much better with small adjustments. And I'm going to go over each one from now on. So focal points and stuff is next. Let me first tell you my reads. So this is always valuable, I think, or it should be if you're an illustrator. It should be very valuable. The first read is the horse for this guy, and then this guy. But I don't think that's supposed to be the case, so there's an issue there, which I will also talk about. First read is the face here, which is good. That's the point. Again, face, very clearly face. And then the first read on this guy was this area on the landscape, which is also, I believe, quite good. So focal points, that's that. Second read third read, sorry, is probably here. Second read is around the hand there. The second read here actually was here for me, and then here the second read was actually, it's kind of hard to tell actually, but the face for sure. And then I think I looked here actually. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, it kind of varies from person to person, but yeah, second read here is that quite clearly. Yeah, and then from then on, I think like third read might be here, definitely there. Third read is probably there, and my third read, really nothing here to grasp onto beyond that. So let's go into each piece individually now and see what we can say about all of them. So should I go in order of quality? I don't know, maybe let's tackle the worst ones first, actually, like in my order that I put down here. So number 5 is the first piece that we should talk about. So the dwarf guy. The dwarf guy is, I think there's something really wrong about his structure, like his pose. I can't really figure it out. Like it's just very awkward and weird, and I think all of it is down to underlying anatomy. So like this arm is then really small suddenly, and then his head kind of comes in there like this, and I don't really know what's going on. Like he has a very, very bizarre body shape, and then this massive hammer that doesn't seem to weigh anything, and then there's something really bizarre about it. So that's why I say I think it's best to chuck it out, because there's no way you're going to save this easily. It's going to require a repaint essentially, and that's really kind of, I mean, it's probably not worth it. It's probably better to just start on a new piece. The other thing is that like the perspective seems really weird. Like this guy is in that perspective, and this guy's kind of hunched over. Also, anatomically speaking, this guy looks more normal. So, and then he has like shoulders. I guess the armor is just insanely massive, and the shoulder would be something like that maybe, but then the shoulder pauldron doesn't come up here, and there's a lot of things that I can talk about anatomically speaking, but the structure is just really off, and that's kind of what the main issue is with this piece. I think the background looks great. This is nice, and all this is nice. All this is nice, but what really matters is the figure in this case, and that's where all the issues are. The main thing that matters is the face, and that's where the most problems occur. And I think this is a recurring thing for you, where you clearly need to work a little more on your facial anatomy and your facial structure, and just paint more faces, essentially. Do more studies on how faces look and stuff, because every time your face and creature designs and stuff, they kind of hurt the rest of your piece. So in this case, if I wanted to fix this with an overpaint, what I would do is immediately I would change the entire structure of his pose. I would probably get rid of this because it's kind of basic and weird, and it feels really light, and I would change the pose entirely probably. Also, I might open him up, so because right now he's kind of like, the silhouette's really not human, it's like a blob if you look at this. So I might even pull his arm out like this and then have him hold this kind of like axe thing like that maybe, or I don't know, there's plenty of things you can do. Also, like, what is the point of the piece itself? So it's just a guy holding a flag. Like, is that it? Like, what is really going on here? Is he a guard? What's this? Is this a fortress that he's protecting? Or so in terms of what is exactly going on, it's also quite strange. It looks like just a dude standing in kind of a weird position in a kind of a weird setting. Like, I don't know what the connection is, and those kind of things do help in illustration quite a lot. It doesn't have to be like a massive story or anything. Sometimes it is just a character piece, but still, there could be some kind of more hints at what he's actually doing and why he's there. So other things, I think the hands look quite good anatomically. I mean, there's still work to be done there, but this one is too small. Like, make sure that all your scales are correct. So there's clearly a difference in size on the hands. Even though it's a little farther in distance, it's not really that much. Same thing with, like, I think I can actually, yeah, look at how much bigger that forearm is compared to the one that's a little further. But I mean, this distance is not massive. It wouldn't warrant that much of a perspective scaling change. But what I was really talking about is the face, which is it just requires, I mean, I'm not going to be able to tell you how to make the face better, but I can tell you that that's really the issue here. And that's by far the worst part of this whole piece. And to get better at that, you should study photos. You should just get some really nice photos of, like, Viking dudes or whatever, like helmed guys or something similar, and find some reference. And then paint faces, because faces are difficult. I mean, there's a reason why it's such a prevalent issue and such a hot topic for artists, because it's a really interesting and difficult problem to solve. So it's normal that it's kind of like the hardest part, and it's also it's probably the area that you most want reference for in general. So I really recommend finding some good photos, so that you can, actually improve on that, and studies in your own time as well, so you kind of have more of a feel. Yeah, so like the first off, like, the perspective is off, I believe. So it's like the eyes are in this plane, but then this one is falling down, right? So small little things like that make it quite strange. But then the eyebrow, this one is really up, but it doesn't feel like you drew, like, it just feels like it's up. It doesn't feel like he's making a facial expression necessarily. And again, that probably all comes down to reference. I mean, it's not a bad thing to use lots and lots of reference and repaint things if it doesn't work out. Do it 10 times if you have to. The hair itself, like the beard, feels kind of too clean and too rendered. I think overall your characters and the stuff that you really rendered have a little bit of a too clean kind of feeling to it. I think you should loosen up a little and don't look at light as this like really like rigid thing, but more of a fluid and dynamic thing. You can play around with it a little bit more. So yeah, like the perspective especially, and then of course individually each piece could use some work. Like your noses aren't exactly spot on, your eyes aren't spot on, and all that is just studies. I cannot say that enough. And reference, lots of reference. Okay, the other thing is your armor designs and stuff. I mean, this kind of comes down to preference, but I like to have some stuff that makes sense in my armors, and I think lots of people pick up on that as well. So I see these things and it looks kind of like I don't really understand what's going on. You know, there's not a single strap anywhere, for example. These little things, that's what matters to me anyway, and I think lots of people pick up on that. So it does matter to others as well, I think, anyway. There's not a single stud or a thing like to attach it to make it make sense. The way this is layered is kind of, I mean, that's not really the biggest issue, but it all feels very impractical and quite bulky, heavy, which isn't necessarily a bad thing for a dwarf, but it's not the right type of heavy, I think. What typically is used actually for dwarves to make them look heavy is like really big fur coats and stuff like that, which I see you've kind of like added some of that. So maybe to make him have this really broad silhouette, what you can do is you can lay on kind of a fur cloak or something like that, maybe, and that would make the shoulder pauldrons and stuff not so comically huge. But again, I mean, it's personal preference. There is clearly precedent for stuff like that, like in World of Warcraft and stuff. So it's not the worst thing. That's just my own kind of like taste. The other big issue with this is that everything is plasticky, so it's not like everything is rendered like it's a default normal material, but the real world is more complex than that, unfortunately. So things look very different, you know, from like in this piece specifically, the metal would massively behave differently, and you'd have all these different reflections and stuff. I think in general your reflections are like I can tell that you're not really thinking about them too much. You're not thinking about reflections so much as you're thinking about the light direction and stuff. So you just thought, you know, I need to light it like this, so how do I do that? Let's do that. But you know, you should look up Fresnel reflections, for example. That's how you write that, Fresnel reflections. And that's basically how, when you have a kind of a curve like this, like let's say a ball, then if it's reflective, then the edges of it, right, the outside edges would be more reflective. So you'd kind of have this kind of a sort of a halo effect to it, or I mean, kind of like a rim light, but not really, you know. And I'm missing all of that. I'm missing every single one of those things. Like this plane is much more like this plane is facing the camera more, and this one is doing the opposite. I don't know what the word is. I'm sorry, English issues. But so, and if a plane is turning away from the camera, then it would be more reflective, right? So these kind of things are what I'm missing. So do some reflection studies. Reflections are very complex. It's not an easy subject at all. In fact, I think in terms of lighting, it's the most difficult one. But you're missing a lot of that, which would make these materials look much more metallic and stuff like that. So that's that one. Let's move on to number 4. I think this was number 4. Did I do that? Yes. Okay. This is the only landscape of the 5, and it's quite clear that you're not as comfortable with landscapes as you are with characters. That said, it means it's not terrible. I just think you need to do more landscapes. So if you really want to break into landscape work, I would recommend doing a bunch more studies and applying them directly into your pieces. So if you want to paint rocks and mountains and stuff, then do some mountain studies, do 10 mountain studies, and then paint that part of your painting. And you'll notice that it's going to be much more realistic, you know. I'm seeing this typical issue in terms of landscape arts, and specifically for rocks, where you kind of have like big shapes, right? And they're a little bit blobby. And like here, same thing, so quite blobby, big shapes. And then you're adding micro details to it, essentially. You're just kind of like adding some texture to it. But that's not really what a real cliff or a mountain looks like. It's much more complex than that. It has more levels of detail, like smaller and larger, and you know, it's kind of hard to explain without, you know, showing you tons of pictures of mountains. But I think you need to manage your level of detail more and look at more reference. Just look at way more reference. The focal point here is quite nice. I like this. I am asking questions like what is actually going on here though. Like you have this typical stick figure guy, traveler dude, and then there's a big egg, which I would assume represents a monster or something. I'm just kind of wondering what's going on, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I don't know what you're trying to communicate with me. Like, are these like webs? What is this hanging off of this? Does that represent like? Does that suggest that it might be like a spider thing? I don't know. Compositionally speaking, you're doing a few good things. I know that you're kind of like trying to block off, you know, towards your focal point. You're framing it like this, framing it like that with light and color, and so you're doing some good things here. But it could be a little more. There's a few things still that I feel are off. For example, everything in the piece right now gives that kind of motion to me. Right, so these spikes specifically, right, really, really harsh compositional indicators, this specifically. And then most obviously, the entire focal point is angled towards that corner. So right now what you're telling the viewer is look at this corner of the piece. Everything is like, look there. So one thing you might want to do, if you want to block off your composition from it escaping that way, what you want to do is maybe flip this guy. Have this egg break up that movement so that it stands out, because that's what you want, right? And so that's just an idea. Keep it well in mind, the flow of your piece, you know. And the other thing you might want to do is like break up the silhouettes. So if you want this egg to stand out, why not have him overlap instead of be completely embedded within this rock formation here? Why not overlap him like that, you know? So and then you can continue this thing down here, maybe, right? So for example, right, tiny little tweak there. I mean, I shouldn't really do paint overs because that's not really what this is, but you get the idea. I think compositionally speaking, there's some work. Also, I recommend doing some cloud studies, because right now these aren't really doing anything. They're not really realistic. They're not really helping. They're very flat. They really flatten the image a lot. So just do some cloud studies. Clouds are much more complicated than this, and they're very hard to paint, so I understand that it's difficult. But they're kind of a personal, kind of like favorite thing of mine. You can learn a lot about clouds and all the types of clouds, and you have to remember always that it is a 3D. The sky is a 3D shape. It's not just a wall painting. And one of the worst things you can do is to have a flat sky, because landscapes are all about depth. Right? What you want to create is depth. You can use atmospheric depth, but also perspective for that. And currently, the issue with your piece is that it's very flat. Beyond the fact that there's a foreground like this, it's essentially what this feels to me is a flat image, right? Because everything looks like a cardboard kind of cut out like this, so you can clearly see that this is like a thing. Maybe not this part. That's a thing, and then this is a flat thing that doesn't really curve into space. See, it's quite, you know, it's all facing the camera almost. There's no depth in terms of like this. You know what I mean? Into the distance. I don't feel like there's any planes that are curved towards the distance. So like, for example, like this thing would be lighted dramatically different from like this, for example, right? But it's really almost the same values and the same things. I can actually look at the values here. Same thing, like if you look at the values alone, like everything is very flat once this foreground, you know, once you ignore the foreground, everything is essentially the same value, which is really one of the worst things you can do to a landscape. The cloud itself, the sky itself would be a harsher gradient, wouldn't be this mid-tone throughout, and you just have much more interesting ranges, you know. So that's what I can recommend. Also, you know, don't just stick to these few plates, but I'd add way more stuff. Really make sure that the depth of your piece is clear, you know, because that's what really makes landscapes. Also scaling is also important. Like I understand that you're trying to suggest scaling here, but what you're really saying is the size of these rocks. You know, you're not really saying how big is this. I don't know. I have no idea how big this is. I don't know how big this is. Like a character could be that big, but it could also be like nothing, or it could be kind of like maybe not that big, but maybe this. I don't know. It's kind of hard to read on a first impression. So what you could do is you could add small elements that we know what the size is, maybe a house or, you know, typical birds or animals or something like that. Trees are a big thing as well that people can read. Although this landscape doesn't really lend well to trees, it's just an idea that you might want to play out the scaling a little more. It also, like, the scaling itself also becomes more obvious once you figure out the perspective a little better and have more depth in your piece. So that's really what it's all about. I want you to take this, which is essentially a flat thing, and I want you to really, like, make it three-dimensional. You know, really focus on pushing the depth of your piece. I think it's a good start, though. You can definitely save this, I believe. This is number 3, I think. The colors are really cool in this one. I like it a lot. The values are also quite nice. So overall, values and colors, cool, quite nice. Let's think about the lighting for a second. So the lighting is coming from, let me see here. I think it's like this. I'm trying to find like a nice shadow to read. Yeah, it's definitely coming from up, not from the front. Yeah, it's something like that, in this kind of like direction. I think your pose is quite nice. Although your hand, like hiding the hand there, might be a little awkward. I think it's quite nice that this tail curves around. I like the environment. Could use a little more details and stuff, but it's quite nice. I like that this curves around here. You know, there's clearly a framing thing going on. The background is quite simple, which is fine for a character piece. So I like a lot of things about this, but what I don't like is the face. I simply don't think it holds up to the other parts of the piece. So, and unfortunately, again, that's your focal point in this case. So I think if you look at this, that looks great. I think that's professional quality if I look at this, but if I then unhide the face, it dips below professional quality for me. I think this is something that's going to come back in the next few as well. So I just think you need to work on your like draw a lot of faces. Like, use a pencil, you know, doesn't have to be digital. Just study characters and creatures and draw a lot of people, and it'll naturally evolve. There's about this, I mean, it's clearly a creature design, so it's kind of hard to say what's wrong with it or what's right with it. But one of the things that I find strange, for example, is the size of it. Like, it's a very small head, and it feels a little awkward because of that, you know? Like, the head is literally like this tiny thing on this quite huge body, you know? If you just compare it to the arm, for example, you know? So it's little things like that that make it slightly awkward. It's also like, you have this clear kind of orientation like this, right? But then the head itself it feels a little more flat, like it's almost like a side view. Not entirely, but yeah. It just needs more work. Design-wise, I think you could make a much more interesting design, a much more appealing design. Even if it's not meant to be a pretty thing, you know, it's a monster, obviously. It could be more solid. Like I assume that these are ears, for example. But then it's missing all the stuff that goes into ears, right? So it's very basic shape. Skin tone wise, like I would feel like this kind of creature would be more wet and like slimy and stuff, and I'm missing all that material definition. You can just look at, you know, reptiles and look at the way their limbs are lit, for example, and just copy that essentially. Or even use photos, you know, and work it into your piece. So not like photo bashing, but like paste in like a part of a, maybe you did that actually, because it doesn't look like there's a little bit of texture going on here, but you're still kind of you overwrote, I think. You just kept the scales, but you didn't really keep the way the material is lit. And in the face itself, that could be pretty cool, I think, if you added some wetness, some slime maybe, and worked more on your forms and stuff. And then, of course, the other thing, like in terms of creature design, you want to always base your stuff in reality, right? So I'm asking the question, if this is a lizard guy, why does he have ears like that? Lizards, they don't really, amphibians don't really have ears like that, at least, so it's kind of strange. So is this like a goblin guy? And why is his mouth more like a fish? I mean, fish and amphibian, I can see the overlap there. It's like a fishy guy. But then the ears again, like the ears are kind of strange. The eyes look very undefined and huge, whereas typically a monster, like an evil monster, this is just a design principle, and obviously you can break it, but a typical monster thing will have small eyes. The smaller the eyes, the more sinister, because it's harder to read, and typically bigger eyes make something look more cute and more friendly, So that these are all kind of things that offset each other and make it very awkward to look at, I think. The other thing is it just feels a little unfinished too, like it's not rendered really well compared to the rest. Like there's some areas here that look more tight and rendered than the face itself, which the face should be 10 times more rendered than all the rest in this piece. You should spend as much time on this, like on this area, as you should spend on all the rest, in my opinion, right? So definitely work on this more, redesign it. There's like things, for example, like this is a tooth, a large kind of a canine, and I think this is the other one, but that's not really, like in perspective, it would be, the tooth would be more like there. It would be behind, right? At least that's how I'm reading it, right? So if this is the face, like if there's this huge eyebrow part, what I would assume is part of the arcus supercilium, then it would be on the other side as well, right? So you'd have this kind of a thing in perspective, but that's also missing. And then I don't know what this is. I think it's like a horn, but it's like this weird, it's like in a weird position. I don't know how it connects to the face. There's like, it's like almost like a random growth, and I don't know, it's not really in perspective. It's not, is this in the middle? Is this one in the middle and then two like that? So you can see what I'm trying to say, is that there's a lot of issues in terms of perspective and stuff as well. Making things turn into like making forms curve into space is quite difficult, especially on a face. So I know that that's a problem area that it deserves more work and love, So definitely the number one thing to work on for this one is the face, absolutely. Then this is number 2, I think. So the first issue is that the first read is the horse, which is not the point, I believe. I think the main attraction here is the samurai guy, but the horse is taking all the attention, and unfortunately it's also the worst piece of this. So the horse head is the least attractive part of this piece, and it's the most demanding of the attention. So there's an issue there. For the horse itself, use reference. I mean, it doesn't look like you looked at real horses. Just draw real horses more, and you'll, these muscles are like too round and kind of strange. The eye doesn't feel realistic, even though I know it's kind of fantasy and it's lit up and stuff, but even still, and I can tell that you kind of like, you did look at some muscles and stuff, but the overall shape of your face is, for example, way too short. Feels a little awkward, and overall, like this head, the reason why it's so demanding is because it's very contrasty. First of all, it's really having that warm and cold light, which immediately grabbed its attention. But what's really demanding about it is its size. It's just massive. Like it's the size of this whole character almost. So the horse head is huge, and if you have issues with this, what you can do is you can do things like if the horse isn't important, then just curve it away. It doesn't need to be, it doesn't need to be on the piece, and maybe have your frame like that, maybe, or what you could do is you could change the lighting so that it's just in shadow. It doesn't actually demand that much light, you know. So just get it to be in shadow or something like that, you know. And of course, yeah, so reference for this. Draw horses. If you're going to tackle a horse, make sure that you know the way the horse structure is, the face structure is in 3 dimensions. It's not easy. I mean, I struggle with the same things, but yeah. And then the same thing for, in terms of reference for the, like the way this stuff, I don't know what the word is for this stuff in English, but there's a very specific way that this is made up. And like none of it really makes any sense right now. There's also nothing connecting him to actually ride the horse or anything. Like that would be here. So I can tell, I can just see, imagine if I was an art director, I could just see that you didn't do your research. You didn't do your homework, and you just kind of, you know, you didn't figure it out. And that's why if I was an art director, I wouldn't hire you, because I can tell that you're not really paying enough attention to the real world, you know, even if it's fantasy. And then on to the rest of the piece. I think the samurai guy looks really cool, quite nice. I like his face. It might have been like photo stuff, but it works, it's fine, as long as you know, I don't know if this is, I think it might be from a photo, but you know, make sure that you have the copyright and stuff, obviously. But other than that, I quite like it. Your materials are better here than on the dwarf guy. The stuff is still, you know, the armor is still quite unrealistic. I would add more little details and trinkets to make this work, like, you know, stuff. I mean, I could talk about armors and stuff for ages, but yeah, I mean, you are kind of doing this a little more, so I know that you're figuring things out a little bit more. But I like him. I mean, it's clearly the best part of the whole thing. The background is quite simple. I would say maybe like this is quite strange in terms of like this is completely nothing. Like there's nothing going on at all. So what I would do maybe is like move these guys there, and then you'd have a little more empty space to breathe, and then your character. Of course, you're also doing the right thing with like in terms of compositionally speaking. All the interesting stuff is going on here, which is great. So that's good. Yeah, I think compositionally, it's quite a strong piece. It's pretty standard composition, and then you have this kind of sword. It's engaging with the viewer perspective-wise. It's quite nice. You got a nice thing leading into the face as well. That's why people do this primarily. It's just to say, hey guys, look at this. But unfortunately, this horse head is stealing all of that. All this work, you know, leading everyone there is kind of being stolen by this contrast. So, yeah. It's mostly just size, really. I mean, it's so massive. This whole thing is, like, the head is so huge. And also keeping in mind that it's closer to the camera, so it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's too big, I think. It's too big. Like, it would be longer, more slender, and just maybe not as, you know, maybe remove this warm light entirely and just have it be kind of in shadow-ish, so it's not as important. Colors are solid again, like I said before. Don't think you need to focus much on color use. You're doing quite okay. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this one. I mean, lighting wise, same thing. Consistency is important. So you have this kind of like a rim light-ish going on some of these areas, but then nothing elsewhere. Like nothing here, you know, like nothing really here, and then suddenly on the other side. So really consistency is important. Think about where your light is in three-dimensional space. Like, is the light source there? Is it coming from up? Is it coming from up front? And how strong is it? And just learn about how lighting works. What I would also recommend actually is getting into 3D. If you never have done that, it's interesting to light things in a 3D software, because you can kind of look at all the settings, you can look at all the possibilities, and you can move light around and just really figure out how it works. which can be super, super valuable in terms of learning that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a solid piece. I would just fix this, and maybe there's small little areas that deserve a little more love, but other than that, it really holds up to your current quality. Yeah, it's a nice one. It's a nice one. And then this one is by far the best one of all the 5. But there's one little thing, well, a huge thing, that is really bringing it down for me. And it's the face. Same thing. If I remove this face and I just don't look at it, like this piece becomes from, like for me, again, it really goes into professional level if I just get rid of the face. That's all I need to do to really make this piece like way better. So it's all about the face, and the reason why is she looks kind of derpy, like a little silly and weird, and it's all because of the perspective being very strange and the design as well a little bit. But like why are her eyes this kind of like weird teardrop curving up shape if her face is an up, like an up angle? So I'm seeing things in this kind of curve, right? And I could fix this with a paint over, but really that's not going to help you. You just need to do more perspective studies and face studies and learn the structure of a face. Use 3D reference if you have to, or get a friend to model for you or something like that. It will make all the difference for this stuff. But I think other than that, other than this face, this is a really solid piece. You're doing a lot of things right. Compositionally, it's by far the strongest one. You got this really, really interesting curve going on. Clearly, the focal point is spot on. That's where I looked first by far. Yeah, this nice framing element. A lot of overlap going on, which is great. Lots of overlap. There's a tangent here, though. This fits a little too well into that. So the arm here fits a little too well into this curve. I would make sure that this overlaps a little bit, or do something else with it. But yeah, I think it works really well. The background looks interesting and nice. The lighting is cool. The colors are cool, as in they're nice, not cool, as in warm cool. But yeah, I think you know what I mean. And yeah, so like it's really, really close to being a really solid #1 piece on your portfolio. That should be the first thing that art directors see. And interestingly, the sketch was posted with it, and the sketch itself is actually really solid. Like the face doesn't look nearly as derpy on the sketch. It's still not perfect, but it's much better. I think you just kind of lost a lot of that into the painting session, into the painting phase. But this looks really good. Like your draftsmanship is also quite spot on. I think it's really just the construction of the face that could be much better to really help this piece out. Lighting wise, I mean, what I can say about this is it's functionally, it's quite nice. It works okay. The lighting isn't necessarily terrible or anything. There's nothing bad going on. But I do think you need to think more about what your shape looks like in 3 dimensions, and like really try and envision what you're looking at, not as a flat thing, but as a real shape with form. And that's obviously easier said than done. But a good example is like your rim light, for example. Like you got this rim light at some places, which, I mean, I can't even say where it's coming from necessarily. So let's say it's coming from here, right? It's kind of like from behind, obviously. So let me do that again, from behind like this. Well, then you would kind of see rim light there, maybe there, maybe there, but you wouldn't see it on this downward facing plane. You wouldn't see it here. And then why is it stronger here than it is there? Right, if this angle is quite clearly more, this would be really strong, and then it would be basically nothing here. And then small little things constantly kind of like, it's just inconsistent. So like here it's really strong on the finger, but then this finger is lit in basically the same way, even though it's completely a different orientation, and in 3 dimensions it would look very different. So you're kind of like rendering things too flat. You're making everything look flatter than it is, because your drawing is really solid, right? Your drawing looks like a three-dimensional thing, but your lighting is very flat, right? Especially with the rim lighting. Just be careful with that stuff. Rim lighting is not like you're not like outlining a piece, like a, you know, it looks more like you're outlining stuff. You know, you're just kind of going, you're not really thinking about it. You're just kind of going, oh yeah, that's a rim light. I have to just kind of like accentuate these edges. But that's not really how lighting works, and that's, you need to be more mindful of what you're doing, all the decisions that you're making, because yeah, lighting is difficult, and if you're not in it with your, you know, with your head, and you're not seeing, like, the more you make your piece look flatter, the harder it is to figure out the 3D of it, and then the more flatter it will end up again, and you know, it's kind of like this downward spiral, right? So be very mindful, especially in the beginning. Be very careful about how you light things. Make every decision be you know, like a thing that you really thought about, like, what is this, how does this shape look if I were to make it into like a polygonal model for a game, for example. Well, you kind of might have something like this going on, and really think about all the planes that this thing has, right? And then you have this massive curve change here, so that light would change drastically. And I see you're doing a decent job everywhere, but it just needs to be a little more mindful. You're really close to, you know, figuring it out. I think you know a lot of the basic principles, and you're doing quite a good job of it overall. So the face, especially, that's where you really need to work. I would just delete this and do it again, and don't touch the rest necessarily unless you really have a clear idea of what is wrong, and like in the meantime, just do studies and studies and studies, and then come back to it, and you'll see stuff that is easier to fix. But yeah, for the face, I mean, again, this isn't really an overpaint thing, but like, for example, if this was the, well, let's say this is the head shape, you know, then if I try this, you would, for example, see the bottom of the chin, like below the chin, right? And then you'd see, and then all the features would be on this kind of a curve, like this. And so with the eyes, by the way, you know, you'd see more of the orbitae, the eye sockets, the bottom, right? And then the ears would kind of, you know, in perspective, they would go down here, because ears, they kind of start at the eyebrow ridge or the eyebrow line, something like that. So down in perspective would be something like this, right? So, and if you then compare this, then you can see how you flattened it. You didn't think about the structure, the overall structure, and it made it look kind of strange in the end, especially around the eyes. It's very weird how you kind of essentially try to do a front view almost by pushing this all the way down. And it's good, it's really good that you're trying these kind of angles. I can tell that you were trying to have an up angle like this because of the distance of the chin and so on. And you can see a little bit below this helmet and all these kind of things. So I can tell that you were trying that, but do a more solid construction. Figure out your construction a little better, and it will really, really help your work a lot. So I think that was it. I mean, I've been speaking for quite a while now. I hope I did I said some stuff that helps. I think overall, your stuff, what you should be doing into the future now is doing lots of studies with basic anatomical construction in mind. So do sketches of poses, do sketches of faces, think about all the planes of the face. You can find that, you know, that like model of like a face with all the planes and stuff. Maybe do that one. Find a 3D model of it, whatever, or buy it, I don't know, and then just do a bunch of sketches of that and really try and think about how this all works in 3 dimensions and stuff. To do side views, do front views, to do 3/4 views, up and down, and do like 100 of them each, you know, and you'll be way better at that stuff just in a couple of days even, you know. It's all about how hard you practice. And then the other thing is, when you're doing a piece, don't be afraid to stop, figure out something, and go back to it, right? So if you're doing dwarf armor and you're not really comfortable doing it, you don't really know what you're doing, you're kind of guessing, then go back, just stop doing your piece, go check out some armor things, do some studies, draw them. If you're not sure about metals, look up some metals, do some studies of metals, and then go back to your piece and continue, right? There's no rush, especially for like portfolio work. You should be doing those things so that you can really kind of make it better than what you can do from your mind, you know? So that's my feedback. I hope that this was worth it for you. I would love to do more of this, so to anyone watching this, if you kind of stuck with it, if you're interested in these kind of sessions or paint over sessions or video like other exclusive video tutorials or other things, my Patreon starts at $1 a month and it goes up to $25 for basically a mentorship. I love doing this stuff, so please be sure to go for it if you want to. The spots are limited, but I can't, obviously I cannot take on 1 million people, but while the Patreon is new, it's your time to kind of take advantage of me in a way. Yeah, so that's it. That's the feedback session. I hope you liked it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.